Before moving on to the mug, I want to spend some time making another cup that's far more complex and complex enough that it would make it very difficult to make the interior one edge loop at a time. So here I'll bring in the image so you can see what I'm talking about. And it's this one right here. So this cup has these ribs and it has these details at the foot. It has the details at the rim or the lip of the cup. And I wouldn't want to have to go through all of that labor on the inside as well. So there's a technique to, it's very quick, it's very simple, it's very effective to thicken this cup based on the exterior shell. So unlike the last one, I'm not going to build the inside, we're going to automate it. So similar to the last cup, I'm going to model mostly from the front view, and I'll set up this reference so that it's the same as before, so looking through camera only. I'll reduce the gain so it's easier to see the wireframes, and I'm going to adjust where it's centered on X, but I'll know how to do that when I actually bring in a cylinder, and the cylinder is on the origin. We'll just translate these and scale them. And notice I can scale from the center of the gizmo because this is a two-dimensional selection. There's no third dimension to these points. They exist on one plane. Alright, so I just want to adjust the position of the cup so that it more closely matches. So I'm going to go here to View, select Camera, and the Image Plane tab, and near the bottom, the Image Center on X. Control, middle click, and slide that, and let's just push this back on the Z-axis a little bit so that I can see my wireframe. And that looks okay. That's okay, I suppose. We'll go with that. So negative 0.3 seems to be okay. And the rest of it I can detail in. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to add edge loops one at a time. I thought of doing some smart, fancy way of doing all the ribs all at once, but it really didn't look very natural. That was to use the, what I mean by that is I could use the Insert Edge Loop tool option box and set this to multiple and try and divide in as many cuts as I can, so I could, click like that and get a whole bunch of cuts. But there's a couple of problems with it. One is that it doesn't go over the value of 10. So I've counted 14 ribs, so that means I'd have to cut 7 and then go through and cut each one in half. And I found, well, if I'm going to go through that much labor, I'm going to add each one myself carefully and get them right where they match the image. So that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to use the relative distance from edge. And just go in here and dictate one at a time exactly where I want them to be at the valley of the ridge. Not at the peak of the ridge, at the valley of the ridge. And take a moment to do this. It tends to have a much more natural look, and you can try it for yourself both ways, but I do like the way this looks a lot better. Okay, so now I've got all of those divisions at the valley of each ridge, and so now what I'm going to do is switch to face mode. I'm also going to hit Q to drop out of that tool. I think it would be better if I got each edge loop. Let's do this. So I'm going to get each edge loop, and what I want to do is take each edge loop and split them. I'm just holding shift and double clicking, and I want to split them in like some kind of cell. I want them to split. So I'm going to use bevel to do that. Slightly different use of bevel, and my settings are still in here from when I did my test. So 0.1 width and 1 segment. So basically, no. I don't need 3 edges. I just need the 2. So watch what happens. So they just split open like that. So what I get now is the ability to go to faces, double click, and get each loop, and you know that this works well from the last video or a couple of videos ago when I was talking about island selections. Okay, so now I have all of these here, and I'm going to extrude those. And let's take a look at the option box. I just want to make sure there's no offset, and I'll hit apply, and I want to hold control and drag on this thickness parameter and just push those out a little bit like that, and maybe hit number 4 to look at it in wireframe. And I want to maybe just offset it a little and squeeze them down like that, not too much, and that should do it. And I am actually pushing out away from the edge of the image because I know Subdivision Surfaces is going to squeeze it in a bit. Okay, so I'm going to hit Q to drop out of that tool, and now I'm going to spend some time. You could hit number 3, I suppose, just to preview it and see what it's going to look like. And you can see that the ribs themselves are nice and tight. They look good. And they do match the image, so that's nice. Or at least they match the contours of the image. So now I'm going to go through and put in divisions for the rest. So that's going to be insert edge loop. So I need a valley division here, and the top of the valley here. Valley division there. I'm only looking at this contour. I'm not looking at any of this stuff because it's bowed. I'm just looking right here. And then I'm going to go to edge, hit Q to drop out of that tool, double click this edge loop, and just scale it in just a wee bit. Maybe this one, push it out a wee bit. Just a little bit. And there we go. We'll do this one. And I suppose the rest is just using your eyes and going from there. Let's do the bottom a little bit. So I've got a division here to do. Again, I can hold spacebar and go to recent commands and choose, yeah, that one, edge ring, split edge ring. And notice I can put a supporting edge here to hold the top of the peak, and then this one's going to get squeezed in, so I can go to edge, mode, Q, double click, R, scale in, and maybe go to vertex and just grab this whole bottom here and control click on the y-axis, control clicking so I can just push the whole thing out. And maybe another division here about, and then maybe one to support the foot. And let's go to vertex and just grab, again, all the vertices on the bottom. Hit Q to drop out of that split tool because it's always active. Hit R, and again, control clicking on the y-axis. Just actually, I need another edge right here because this whole, all 3 of these edges need to come in. So I'm going to split one more time right here just to support it, and then I'll hit Q, go to vertex, marquee those 3, and control drag those in. Yeah, see, that's a little bit better. I'm going to go to the perspective view, number 5 for shaded. I'm going to remove these top 8 triangles, number 4 to confirm my selection, and hit delete on my keyboard to delete them. I'm more or less done. Now, I could do a bit more detailing here, more supporting edges. I need more of the 3 edge loop. I need more on the rim, but I'd like to make the interior because the bulk of it is nearly done. Although I think maybe I should make the foot before I make the interior. So I'll go to faces and just marquee all the triangles on the bottom. And similar to what I did in the last cup, I'm going to shrink these triangles down and I'm going to push them in to make a foot. So I'm going to, and I'll just take a little artistic license here, ignoring the reference. I'm going to extrude them. And I'm going to push them in a little bit. I'm going to extrude again, so I'll just hit G, because that was the last thing I did. And push them in the surface. And maybe just offset them in a little bit, so that it has a So there's a bit of an angle right here. And then I will extrude again G one more time because it was the last thing I did, and then offset that larger so those triangles are small. Okay? And I'll do my supporting edges on the foot right now because those same supporting edges will show on the interior when I do the thickening process. So I'll go to double click this edge and that one. I'll hit number 4 to make sure I didn't grab something I don't want to, and I did, so I'm just going to hold Control to remove that from my selection and marquee over it. Yeah, so I'll bevel these two. Bevel option box 2 so that I have a total of 3, and I'll increase the spacing to 0.25, and then for this corner, since I've already got an edge right here, I had one of two things. I can remove that edge by double clicking that edge loop and removing it and then bevel it, or I could simply insert an edge loop on this side right here to balance the one on the outside. I think I'd like to show you removing it because I haven't done that yet. So let's remove this edge loop. That would be under Edit Mesh, and the proper way to remove an edge is to use the Delete Edge Vertex. If you don't use this tool, if you just hit the delete key on the keyboard, it will leave the vertex behind, causing all sorts of little problems. So this is the proper way to do it, to remove an edge, assuming you don't want to leave the points. And then edge, and then I will double click that edge again, and I'll run the bevel again with the same settings. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I probably should add some supporting edges here and here at least. I don't have to do the rim, but maybe here and here, so that the interior has the same edge work. So again, inserting edges, I'll support there and there, and notice I'm getting away with 2 edges, and let me see if I can get away with 2 here and here. Let's hit number 3 to see what it looks like. Looks pretty good. So you can see I'm interpreting my own rule here of 3 edges, but because they're so close to each other, it's like having 3 borrowing from the neighboring edge for a total of 3. So that works very well right there. And let's just push all of those vertices, hit Q to drop out of that. Let's push all of these vertices on the contour out so they match the width of the image, or you know what I'm trying to say. I think you know what I'm trying to say. So let's grab everything again before we actually thicken the interior and scale it, and control click on the y-axis and just push that out a little. That's pretty good. And maybe grab this section down here and push that out a little bit. That's good. Then this is nice and straight right here. Alright, that's I would say is fair and acceptable, and we can move on. So let's do the thickening process, which is what we've come here for. It's really quite simple. I'm going to select the object in object mode, so confirming that I'm actually in object mode, and it's highlighted in green, so I know I'm in object mode. And I'm just going to extrude the entire object right here. Now, it looks like nothing happened, or you may get a little bit of a visual, depending on what your previous settings were. But all I want to do is translate the local Z. And I'm going to use the virtual slider to do that. So I'm going to highlight the word local translate Z, and then middle click and drag in the viewport. And if I push outward, it's thickening it relative to every polygon's normal. And if I thicken inwards, which is what I would prefer to do because I've already done all the hard work of creating the contours, I'm going to thicken it a bit, just a little bit, because I don't want this interior edges to collapse. If I go too far, they start smudging on top of each other, and I don't want that. Just enough so that it's thickened. And if you think this rim is too thin, that's okay. We can go in there and just thicken the rim, because quite honestly, that's how a cup is made anyway. So we can go in here and actually take this poly loop and squeeze it in a little bit, and that'll give some thickness to the rim to make it more comfortable on your lips, and it works very well. And then we can inspect the bottom here, and you can see that it conforms very nicely. So this technique works really, really well with complex manufactured items where the shell, the outside shell of the object, and the interior shell of the object are exactly the same contour. It's simply offset inwards, or in this case, the translation on Z is pushed inwards. Some of you may be thinking to use this thickness parameter. That works too sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't. And you're just going to have to try it for yourself to find out why. If the thickness parameter doesn't work, if it's giving you some weird polygon artifacts, which it does, and I don't exactly know why, I substitute that option for the local translate Z, and most of the time I just reach for the local translate Z. Now, the downside to using the local translate Z in this case is really minor. What happens is all of the polygon normals are pointing inward, and I can prove that with display polygons face normals. It looks like a bit of a mess, but what you're seeing is that this hair right here, this normal, is actually its opposite from the inside. So what I'm going to do is, in object mode, go to normals. I'm in my polygon menu set. Normals, reverse. And now we should be seeing, let's get out of subdivision surfaces. It's a lot easier to see when you're in polygon mode. And now we can see that each normal is in fact coming from its polygon. And to prove it to you again, let's just reverse the whole thing again. You see how it's like a little green dot right there at the center of the polygon? That tells you it's inside out. So that's the right direction, correct direction. And now I can take the face loop on the inside and maybe do a little bit of scaling. Again, control clicking on the y-axis. Maybe just thicken that up a little bit. Maybe work with the edges a little bit. And let's see here, translate it outward, maybe scale it outward a bit. Maybe drop another edge loop in here to round it out. Again, taking a little bit of artistic license based, away from the reference image, but I do think it's a good choice. And so now when I do subdivision surfaces and turn off my normals, another place you can turn off the normals is right here under the attribute editor, mesh component display normal. There we go. And let's get out of object and just take a look at it from a distance. So that's pretty nice. Next thing you would do is toss a material on it, figure out your transparency material, and maybe some caustics, some nice lighting, but that's the bulk of it. We'll see you in the next one. This went well. Okay, now on to the mug. And for this one, I decided to draw my own reference. And I drew it on graph paper and scanned it in as a JPEG, just cropped it a little bit. And I'm going to set this up in the viewport like I would normally. So I'm going to check mark looking through camera and reduce the gain so it's easier to see. And I'm going to make sure it's pushed back so the grid is on top. Negative 0.1 on the X this time because I'm in the side view. Notice I didn't use the front view. I'm in the side view now. Side view. And I'm also going to increase on the y-axis so that the drawing is sitting on the ground. Something like that. And I'm going to center it. I think it was a value of, I already did this once, so 2.65 I believe is what it was. 6.5. That's close to center. And I'm going to bring in a cylinder. Now, what I would like to show you here, which I haven't said yet, is I want to scale this cylinder larger. Now, your gut reaction is to hit R and to scale it, and then also to hit W and move it into place. And you would think that that's perfectly fine, and I suppose most most of the time, you can get away with that if you know what you're doing. But if this is your first time modeling, and even if this isn't your first time modeling, it's my advice not to scale the object, not to move the object, not to rotate the object, so that none of these numbers change from their original. So what you should do is scale, rotate, and translate the components, because these numbers tend to impact rigging more than not. And yes, in Maya and other programs like Softimage, you have the ability to freeze the scale, which sets it back to a value of 1. But I find it is good practice to simply not rely on scaling the object itself and leave that to the rigging TDs and the animators. That you should be working with the components, so the origin does not change scale. Origin of the object does not change scale. So I'm going to set this back to 0 and set the scale back to 1. And I'm going to go to faces and select all the faces, move them into place, and scale them larger. And this is a much better move in so many ways. And I'm also going to just get the bottom here matched up. Looks like the top is matched up very good. Got some good luck on that. And I'm going to scale in these points at the bottom, or I mean the top, and then these at the bottom. And I'm going to go through the work of creating the profile again. I'm going to ignore this section of the drawing because that's actually like a metal band that I have on my ceramic. And I'm going to do the process of doing the profile like I had done the cup, and I'm going to thicken it. Then I'm going to attach the handle, and then I'm going to detail in this metal band piece. Reason for doing the handle last and the metal band last is because, one, this is a separate material, and the metal band is a separate material, and it's attached to the ceramic. And two, that if I were to attach the handle first and then do the thickening process, we would end up with a hollow handle. So if your intent is to make a mug that has a hollow handle, you do the handle first. But I don't want that. I want a solid handle, so I'm going to do it last. And I'm going to make the handle with a curve, and I'll explain briefly, introduce the components of a curve and what you need to know in order to produce this extrusion properly. So if you feel that you're doing well and you know what you're doing, go ahead and skip ahead. If not, if this is you feeling like you're struggling, or you well, just stick with me and we'll finish this thing. So there's one other thing that I'm missing, and is very important, and that is, in order for me to attach this handle, I need to have far more vertical divisions on this mug. I don't need to worry so much about horizontal divisions because I can add those in myself one at a time without drastically distorting the shape of the mug. However, if I want to add in detail on the side of this cylinder, this is either going to be a very fat handle, because it would be this width right here, or I'm going to have to increase my, the number of sides. So, with that in mind, I am going to delete this, knowing that I need that. And let's go back to the side view, expand this, and bring in my cylinder. And, I guess it's good for you to see me do that, and I do that when I start going too quickly. I'll forget even to increase it, and then I sit here and remind myself, oh, I need to increase that. Like I just did it again, because I'm talking. Silly me. Instead of 8 sides, let's do 24. There we go. Now I can get it into place and start my work. Get those into place, scale them into place. Now I have plenty of divisions, vertical divisions, to properly extrude the handle, and if it doesn't make sense to you right now, it will shortly. I'm going to go through the process of adding these divisions using my insert edge loop tool. Valleys, valley, another valley here, a support at the foot, maybe a peak, and I'm going to go to faces, face mode, and I'm going to actually I'm going to go to vertex mode, excuse me. Let's do vertex and scale this in, match up my drawing, scale that one. Not worried too much about the peaks, mostly the valleys. And I'm looking on this side of the drawing. I understand that it's a little bit off over here, so I'm just going to look on this side. And I need maybe 3 divisions to make this bow nice. And I'm going to make sure one of them is right underneath the handle here because I'm going to need that. So I've got a division here at the top of the handle, and I need a division right here to support the bottom of the handle. So I'm going to go to my recent commands, get that, make sure there's one right there, and maybe about here. Doesn't really matter where yeah, that's fine. And how about one right here to support the attachment of the handle? Yeah, and then I'm going to go to vertex, scale those, inward, inward, scale that. And I'm bound to make a couple of mistakes here. I'm trying to move reasonably quickly on this because I think you can do most of this stuff on your own, but I really do believe for those of you who are just starting could really benefit from seeing me do this over and over and over again so that you get a good, strong feeling on how you're supposed to be done, how it's supposed to be done. And this time I'm going to go to face, and I'm going to extrude it. Edit mesh, extrude, offset inward a little bit, so now I'm getting like 2-for-1 edge loops, thickness a little bit, push that out a little bit. We did that with the ridges and of the cup earlier. And again, extrude, offset some, thickness some. I'm looking at this side of the drawing, and maybe here too. Extrude, thickness some, offset some. There we go. So it gets a nice curvature right there. Oh yeah, and this one too. Looks okay, I think. Let's give it another supporting edge right in here. Maybe be a bit more meticulous on my valleys. There we go, and I've got a little bit of a bump right there that I want to be a part of the illustration. I mean, part of the model that's in the illustration. And scale that out a little. Alright. And then subdivision surfaces. Let's see what it looks like. It's not bad. And notice how it doesn't crush inward like an 8-sided cylinder does. 24-sided cylinder, more sides, more vertices, better preservation of volume. Keep that in mind. Alright, looking pretty good. I think for the most part, let's make the foot. That's what the foot meaning the foot that it sits on. This dotted line represents the inside of my foot, so for the mug. So I'm going to go to the perspective view. I'm going to turn off the grid and hit number 5 for shaded, and I'm going to go to face mode. And I just want to grab all those really quickly. Let's do it a slightly different way. Let's go to the select tool, double click it, drag, and just go like that. Click and drag. Beautiful. Switch back to marquee. Don't stay on drag. It's too buggy. Just use drag, turn it off. And I'm going to extrude it. And there it is. Offset again. And let's offset just enough so that from the side view in wireframe, you know, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to extrude again. I was going to say something, please ignore that. But pay attention to this part. So what I was going to say is I was trying to see like where my offset would meet my dotted line, but it doesn't really matter. I can adjust at any time. So let's pull that, and let's go to 4 view here. Turn the grid off on this one too. It's in the way. Number 5 for this one. And this time I'll go to edge mode, Q, double click, make sure that's all I got. Okay, good. And referencing my drawing, I'm going to look at this dotted line, this angle right here, and I'm going to scale that until it matches right there. Bingo. Good. there's the foot that I intended to create. Not bad. Now, in a handmade ceramic situation, the foot does not conform on the inside, unlike plastic manufactured stuff. I will forego those details for the sake of speed here. Same thing. Let's do the selections on the top. Whoops. Not edges. Faces. There we go. And delete. Back to marquee. Back to object. Go back here. And I think we are ready to go for the thickening. The quickening. The thickening. Let's just insert a support here. Too close. Here. Here. And here for a little help. Keep those sharp. I want a nice sharp foot. And these triangles, make them smaller. Extrude. Scale. Make them smaller. Prevents visual garbage, visual artifacts. And you know what? I think I just came up with a quick idea on how to finish the inside so that the foot and the interior don't exactly conform. I want this side to conform, but not that part. And we'll do that in a minute. You know, for the sake of even spacing, because I've talked about having your polygons square-like before, and I don't know when I said that. It was a few videos ago, but let's drop one here, and here, here, and possibly one right here for an extra support. Go back to the side view and adjust in wireframe those curvatures a little bit. And you know, for some of you who have more experience, you're probably thinking, why the hell doesn't Matt use a lathe or a revolve and then convert from a NURBS? Well, that's because that's a different technique. I'm showing you this one, and then later I'll show you how to revolve. So you need not worry. I will get to all the ways in which we can model, and I think this is as reasonable as any other. And it tends to have a little bit more flavor when doing it in this way, when modeling in this way. I think there's a little bit more humanity when you go in there and you adjust every single point, every single edge. It takes longer. Some of you just want to hit the render button and go have a donut, but I think a little bit of love in your work, it can go a long way. Alright, so let's just double check my edges before I do the extrusion, because I'm paranoid about that. I've got good spacing here and here for my drawing. I've got a good connection coming out here and here. I'm going to have a good connection here and here. You know, maybe I think I want that little bit of detail right there, so I'm going to select it. Get to the point, Matt. Right. I will get to the point. Okay, and number 3, to confirm and make sure I like what I'm doing. And perspective, and number 5, and you know, I like it. You know, it's a nice, sharp little guy. Okay, and it's got some hand-touched feel to it, sort of. And anyway, extruding the whole thing. So in object mode, we've done this before. Look at my modeling history is getting kind of tall. For those of you with slower computers, this would be a good time to delete the history. Actually, this is a huge stack. Right here, edit, delete by type, history. And now that's all blown away, and this is what you're left with. That's a good thing. Extrude, and local translate Z. Use the virtual slider, slow down the virtual slider, squeeze it inward. That looks good. I do have some ideas on finishing the inside. Here's my idea. My idea is to go to face mode and select this ring of quads and then grow my selection. So shift greater than, grow, grow, grow. Switch to the side view and grow it a little bit more so I can see it from the side. Grow, 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 grow. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And that's good. And then hit delete. All right. So I've got a big hole at the bottom. This is good. It's not bad. There's a nice fast fix tool here that goes like this. In object mode, mesh, fill hole, and it fills that hole that I made. And there's another nice little tool here. Select that big polygon it made, this giant n-gon multi-point polygon. Go to select it and then go to edit mesh and poke face. It makes triangles. Brilliant. Okay, we want to keep those small. Edit mesh extrude. Offset that in just a wee bit, just a little bit, so you have a supporting edge on the inside, and then extrude one more time. And squeeze it in nice and small. Something like that. Great. And let's check it in sub-Ds. This edge looks okay. I could sharpen it if I want to. This looks okay. And on the inside, it doesn't completely conform to the foot, which is more natural than more what it would actually be if this was a cut ceramic foot made out of clay. Handmade out of clay. All right. So, brilliant. And now we go to the side view and draw the curve for the extrusion and then do any remaining detailing work from there. I'm going to go somewhere. Create. Here we go. Create curve, CV curve tool. We needn't go in the option box. The default will work for us. And I found that at least 6 points, at least 4 points have to be drawn to draw a curve. So 1, 2, I'm just clicking, 3, 4. So now I have a curve. And I think 6 or maybe 8 would be enough for this design. So 5, 6, let's do 7 and 8 for this design. And then hit enter on your keyboard to confirm that. Okay, so what you need to know about curves is that they're similar in component-wise to polygon objects. They have points like a polygon object does, except you have 3 choices: curve, point, control vertex, and edit point. What you need to know right now is that curve control vertex is the one you want. So select that one, and in purple are all the little control vertices that you can select. So the U signifies the starting point, that this is the starting vertex, control vertex of this curve. So this U is the tangent handle to this curve, to this, sorry, to this control vertex. So I can translate that into place. And I'm going to translate in world space. Again, this is holding down W, left clicking and holding for that radial menu. I'm going to translate in world space. So I'm going to pull this up until this is level. And then for the remaining, just move them wherever they need to be. And I don't even need to be terribly precise about this in the beginning, but it does help for me to be precise because I like that. I enjoy being precise. So let's just give them. Don't worry about this bump right here, this thumb tab, or this thing right here. That can be added after the fact, after the extrusion. So the extrusion all by itself is going to be kind of dull, and we're going to have to decorate it. Okay, I think that's good. That gives me the flavor of what I'm looking for. And then the first point can butt up against, it doesn't have to, but it should be, in my experience, better. You're better off if it's right up against where you're trying to extrude. And notice I did all of the drawing of this curve from the side viewport. So when I go to the perspective view, it is a flat, flush curve on one plane. Very nice. So let's right click on that and go to object mode. This has to be in object mode. This curve has to be in object mode. So in order for this process to work. I'm in sub D's in the mug. Let's get out of that. I'm going to extrude from 2 polygons. This polygon and this polygon. 2 of them. And it just so happens that the divisions of 24 makes a very convenient 2 polygon extrusion for me right here. I must have thought of that earlier. I'm going to hit number 4 to confirm my selection, make sure I didn't grab something else, or else this will have problems. And I'm going to shift select the curve. If this curve is not highlighted in green, then you did it wrong. That's all you need to know. So this one's in object mode. This one's in face mode. Select your two polygons carefully. Shift select your curve, and then go to Edit Mesh Extrude. And if you want to look in the option box, there's really not much different here other than we're going to use taper. And we can do that with the channel box. So I'm going to hit apply. Oh, it looks terrible. That's okay. This is normal. Just increase divisions until it matches the curve, and probably somewhere between 12 and 14 would do the job. I'm going to go with 12 and keep it relatively simple. I would like the handle to taper as it gets to the end of the curve, and there happens to be a feature for that right here inside the extrusion. I'll use my virtual slider, squeeze that down a bit, and that's elegant. I like that. I like a little taper like that, as if it was actually hand-pulled clay. For the thumb tab, I'm going to take these two faces, and again confirm that those are the two I have, and extrude them. And then I'm going to offset them just a bit, and then maybe just do a little rotation on that and a little translation on that. And that's pretty much it. The rest of it's just supporting edges. For the bottom, what you need to know is we're going to connect these two to those two right there. And so this technique, this tool, which is the first time I've used it in these videos so far, is bridge. And in the option box, I want to make sure it's linear, and I don't want any divisions. So drag that all the way down to 0 and hit apply. And you can see it's a nice, clean connection between the two. Now there's a bit of a compression going on right here. I could either A, move those edges, or B, I could move the curve. I would like to show you moving the curve. So let's switch back to the side view and hit number 4 and get out of face mode or any kind of component mode for this object. Get to object mode. The reason for that is that I can't click through the object to select the curve if I'm in face mode. So you can see here all I can do is click the faces even though I'm in a wireframe mode. It's confusing when you do it the first time. I know it was for me when I used Maya for the first time. So make sure you're in object mode, and then you can select the curve. Notice that the object is in purple. That tells you that the mug is connected to the output of the curve. So there's an output operator right here, this one. This is the extrusion operator, this first one. That's actually the connection between this curve and this polygon object, the mug. And then if I select the mug, you can see it's an input. That same, where is it? Number 5. That one is the input from the curve. So they're connected by input-output connections. Alright, so I can select the control vertices of the curve and continue to do further edits regardless of it being extruded. So it's a live connection. I'm not going to be able to match my drawing very well in this particular mode. I am going to have to use vertices, one vertex at a time. But I wanted to show you that I can move the end here just to give a bit of thickness, and maybe just take a moment here to adjust the curve to get closer to the drawing, so I don't have to do everything by points. But I am going to abandon it. I'm going to go to points. I'm going to go to object mode for the curve, and I'm going to go into vertex mode for the mug and continue doing the detailing. So at this point, I'm going to pause the video and finish the detailing, and then I'm going to come back and show it to you. There isn't that much more that needs to be done other than adding supporting edges here, moving some vertices around to thicken it. If I run into something that I think is really cool, I'll start the recording again, but I think I'll just show you where it is at the end. So I'll see you in a second. Yeah, so there is something I want to share with you. I taking some time to match it up a little bit and get the thumb tab here and move this a little bit. I'm just going to ignore this bump. It's a bad design. Got this down here matching pretty good. So here's what it looks like in perspective, and here's what it looks like in subdivision surfaces. And what I'd like to do is square up the sides of this handle a little bit, just a little bit, like there's a thumb press here. And I thought that this choice of extruding from there to there, so that's just selecting that one and then shift double clicking that one to get the range, and then extruding it and offsetting a little bit, 0.1 about, so that in subdivision surfaces you can see it looks like a little bit like there's been a thumb press here. And then I could exaggerate that maybe a little bit more by dialing it in and out. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, and maybe even push this down in a little bit here, more like like a potter had jammed his thumb in it. And then I'm going to sharpen up here and sharpen up these just a little bit more. Be right back. Yeah, so that worked out really, really well for the handle. So here's what it looks like without the wireframe on. And I took an edge here and I just pulled it out a little bit here just to soften it. I got a nice squareness here, and I got a nice squareness here because I did yet another extrusion right here. I dropped a supporting edge in here. I left the lip of it nice and round, comfort on the mouth. And what I want to do now is make the metal band. And that's pretty easy. I'm going to select both this band and the one underneath it. And I can't do that because, well, we tried that already. So I'm just going to click these really fast. And I want the metal band to be a separate object. So what I'm going to do is, with those selected, I'm going to go to Edit Mesh and Duplicate Face. And in the option box for Duplicate Face, it says Separate Duplicated Faces. Yes, I want to separate duplicated faces. And what I get, if you hit 8 for your outliner, you get a group, and you get a new object sitting right there. That object, while it's still in object mode, you're going to extrude it, and you're going to change the local translate Z. Just going to push that out a little bit. Turn on the wireframe here so it's easier to see. Just like that, and then I may even do a bit of an offset. Just bring that down some, maybe a little less. Maybe more square would be better. That would be better. And then I can insert some edge loops on this object mode. Actually, let's not insert edge loops. Let's bevel. So let's get some edges. That one, that one, that one, and that one. And I'll go to bevel and make sure it's reasonably small. So I'll say 0.1. 2 segments for my 3 edges. And there it is, nice and tight. There's my metal band. I like it. And then I could texture in like a little seam, how it was welded on or soldered on there. There it is in subdivision surfaces. Pretty decent. We've got a good interior, natural looking mug, 2 materials, 2 objects metal, 1 ceramic, a good foot to it, all following the design drawn out earlier. There's one more issue. There's one more thing. I thought of it earlier, but I forgot to mention it. That would be my polygon normals. I didn't check to see if the thickening process flipped my normals, and I should check those now and make sure that you're aware of it as well. I also didn't freeze the history, delete the history. I've got all this stuff right here, so let me do that too. Trying to keep this clean for you folks. So delete by type, history, there we go. Now I got my basic tabs, and I'm looking for mesh component display, display normal, and I want to make sure my polygon normals are going the right way, and they are not going the right way towards me. And so I'm going to reverse the entire mug, and that is good. Now for this one, let's check it. Same thing. It happens because of the local translate Z when I'm thickening it, and I move it inside out. That's what flips the normals. Happens every time. And if I forgot during the modeling process, I'm reminded during the rendering process. So it's just good to do it now. And then you can turn that off. You don't need that now. And let's also delete the history, modeling history on the metal band. And now I am a happy camper. And we are wrapped up. We'll see you in the next chapter of content, where we're going to move on to construction processes, where we make our own custom primitives and polygons, and we're going to build things up point by point. I know a lot of folks out there don't like point by point modeling, but it still has a place. It's still reasonable. You can solve a lot of problems with it. And on top of all of the multiplication and edge looping and extruding that we've been doing, and we're going to get into more complicated objects. We're going to slowly move away from the cylindrical objects so that we can expand our horizons. Okay, I will see you in the next step.